Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's focus session. My name is Adrielle. Before we get started, if I could just get confirmation from a couple of you in the chat that you can both hear and see the presentation, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, Zach. Okay, it looks like everything is working. So today's focus session is going to be on the property description, guest instructions, and health and safety sections of your OwnerRez account. So we will be going over a few different things. Number one, how to create and use property descriptions, including setting up description overrides. And then we'll also discuss how to complete the guest instructions page and how to complete the health and safety page. So from within your OwnerRez account, to get to these pages, you will go over here to properties and click on that little house icon in the lower left corner. And then you can click on the property in your account that you want to work on. Let me dismiss this announcement. And then over here on the left is where you'll find all of the different listing content pages. And these all need to be completed in your OwnerRez account before you API connect to a channel, such as Airbnb or Vrbo. Last time we met, I talked about some of the other pages. So today we're going to be talking about these three here: description, guest instructions, health and safety. So starting with the description page, you will see something that looks like this, or it might be completely blank if you're starting from scratch. If you are importing a listing from Airbnb, you'll have some content in here already, but if you're starting from scratch, it'll be blank. And to make changes, you'll click on the pencil icon here in default descriptions. And it'll open up all of these different fields where you can complete your description. First thing that I want you all to notice when you look at this page is these icons above each box. These icons tell you which channels pull the information out of that box. So the headline / title, it goes to pretty much every listing channel. If we hover over the icon, it will tell you any requirements that that channel has for that particular field. So by hovering over the Airbnb logo, we can see that Airbnb requires a minimum of 1 character and a maximum of 50 characters for your headline. If we move over to Vrbo, we see that Vrbo requires a minimum of 20 and a maximum of 80 characters. So what this means effectively is your headline needs to be between 20 and 50 characters, because 20 is the minimum for Vrbo and 50 is the maximum for Airbnb. So we can see here that it's only 13 characters. So we already know in order for that to work for Vrbo, we need to add some more information. So you can put whatever you want in here, call out some special amenities that you have, whatever information you think is going to grab your guest's attention is what should go in that headline. The next section we have is our main description box. This feeds out to Vrbo, but it does not feed out to Airbnb. It does go to Vrbo and most other channels. So what I recommend to people usually, just to keep things a little bit simpler and easier to manage, I typically recommend that you put all your descriptions for your property in this main description box, because it does go out to Vrbo. And then you can copy and paste different sections of it into the fields that do go out to Airbnb. So the short description for Airbnb needs to be between 1 and 500 characters. So usually you can take your first paragraph from up here. We're going to copy and paste it into that short description field for Airbnb. And then you can take other sections of your description and copy and paste them into other fields that go to Airbnb. So I'm going to take all of the descriptions of the rooms and the layout of the home. I'm going to copy that, and I'll scroll down this page until I get to a field for Airbnb called the space. And I'm going to paste that portion of my description in there. And then I'm going to scroll back up to my Vrbo description, or my main description. And I'm going to copy the rest of this. And I'm going to put it in my features description box for Airbnb. You'll notice there are a few other boxes you can fill in if you want to, but you don't have to fill in every single box. Just those few will get you into a good place. Now, if you want to add more information, it's never a bad idea to do so, but you don't feel like you have to fill in every single box with something, because it can get a little overwhelming, especially when you're first starting out. So Some other boxes you might want to add are the location description that goes to Airbnb. Getting there, this is where you would just put generic information about maybe, is it accessible by car? Is there an airport nearby? Pretty general info. You don't want to put your address or anything here because it does display publicly on your Airbnb listing. So that would be for Airbnb. And then location activities, this will feed out to Vrbo. So you notice there's a little difference between location description, which does not go out to Vrbo. It just goes to Airbnb and these other sites. And this one down here, location activities, goes to Vrbo and other sites. So some slight differences in which sites pull from certain boxes. So that's one thing to pay attention on this page. Once you have everything kind of set up the way you want it to be, you can click Save and Close. And then one tool that's really great, because as we already discussed, Airbnb maxes you out at 50 characters, but Vrbo gives you up to 80. So if you want to, you can add an override. So first we would copy your existing headline, and then we would click on this Add Override button. And let's add an override for Vrbo. And now we can replace the default headline with a different headline that will go only to Vrbo. And we'll be able to add more details here because we now have 80 characters instead of just 50. So these description overrides can be really good to use in that way. And these field codes just mean that it's pulling whatever information you have in that box from your default descriptions tab. So if you need to add information that's specific just to Vrbo listings, you can use an override to do that as well. And of course, you can create an override for any of these channels. So another way to use an override is if you are using the OwnerRez hosted website, you can create an override just for that. So what I'm going to do first is copy my main description from my default tab. And then I'm going to add an override for my OwnerRez website. And I'm going to paste this in here. But before we make any changes, I want us to look at how the description looks currently on the hosted website. So without making any changes and doing an override, this is what that description looks like on that OwnerRez hosted website. And now I'm going to make some edits. So let's see here. It looks like I need to replace my paragraphs, and we won't worry too much about that. Okay, and then let's see here. Here we go, accessibility features. So I'm going to make this a list. So one thing that I can do is make this a bulleted list instead of just an unbulleted list like I had on the default description. And that'll look like this. Okay, I'm not going to bullet every single thing because you guys get the idea. Another thing that you can do to further customize the description for the hosted website is you can make actual headers. So if I select heading 2, it's going to change it. And then depending on what my settings are on my hosted website, it may even change the color of that on the website itself. And so here I'm going to put in, let's see, we'll just say, we'll put home description for this headline, put whatever you want there, and we'll make that a headline as well, or a heading, sorry. And then you can click save on this. And now when we refresh the hosted website, we should see these headers and the bulleted features list instead of just plain text. So that's really nice that you can do the rich text formatting on your hosted website. All right, so that covers the description page. Let's go ahead and look at guest instructions now. The guest instructions page pretty much just feeds out to your Airbnb listing. Certain field codes can be used within OwnerRez internally, but because this displays to your Airbnb guests after they book, We typically recommend that you keep this pretty generic and just put guest instructions will be provided X number of days prior to arrival. And then in the settings area of OwnerRez, under templates and triggers, you can create your check-in instructions message to send however far in advance you want. So if you're sending it 3 days, obviously you could say 3 days here. If you're doing 7 days, you would change this to 7 days prior to arrival. And I skipped the check-in type. Here you'd want to choose what type of check-in is available to the guest. So if the host is greeting them, you'd choose that. If there's a lockbox for a physical key, obviously you would choose lockbox. Whatever applies to your property here is what you'll select. Then you can copy whatever you put here and put it in the directions box as well. And then in the Wi-Fi network and Wi-Fi password boxes, you do want to fill that in. And some of the guidebook integrations that OwnerRez integrates with will pull your network information out of these two boxes. So that's the other place where this might get used if you're integrated with a welcome guide, like a digital guidebook that displays Wi-Fi network and password to your guests. Some of the integrations will pull this info. Then it's up to you if you want to provide additional information on the internet or house manual. And then you would click save on this section. And then there's one more section that you need to complete. It's the checkout task section. So this feeds out to Airbnb. It doesn't go out to any other channels. So if you need to include this information for other channels, you want to make sure that you just add it in your description or at least in a message. So here you would select everything that you want your guests to do before they depart. And then if you have the additional requests selected, you do need to make sure that you fill in some text by hovering over it and clicking on the pencil icon, and then put in here whatever the additional items are that you need your guests to complete. If you do not do that and you have this selected, it will cause an error when your Airbnb listing syncs over to Airbnb. It's also a good idea to just provide additional details in these other ones. So if you want your guests to gather the towels, it may be a good idea to click on that pencil icon and tell them where you want them to put those towels. That way there's no confusion about, yes, okay, so they're supposed to gather the towels, but then what do they do with them? Just give them a little bit more instruction so the guest knows that they're doing what they need to do. Next, let's talk about the health and safety page. So for health and safety, these fields do go out to different listing sites, kind of like everything else in your listing content. You want to select everything that applies to your property. So if you have a porch light or other exterior lighting, you'd select that. Deadbolt lock on the front door, make sure you select that, so on and so forth. This page is pretty self-explanatory. If you have a first aid kit, it may be helpful to indicate where that first aid kit is located. Something like under the sink in the hallway bathroom. And same thing for the fire extinguisher. It could be good to put the location of that mounted on side of cabinet next to garage door or something like that. Obviously wherever you have it in your property is what you should put there. And then if you have emergency contact numbers in your region, which I believe everyone does, it can be useful to put that in here. I don't know if every country uses the same emergency contact number. So just in case you have people coming from an area that might have a different emergency contact number, something other than 911, it can be helpful to have that included as well. All right, now I'm going to circle back to the description page because I did forget to mention one thing, which is sections on what characters and things like that can be included in your descriptions. So for Airbnb and some other sites, Vrbo can be picky about this as well. They don't want to see any emojis in your descriptions. You can't have any words that are in all caps. You can't have any repeated symbols, and you can't have any links or direct contact. So what this is going to look like in practice is you're going to edit the description. You won't be able to have double or triple, any multiple repeated characters will cause an error. So if you want to use an exclamation point or periods or anything like that, make sure you're just using one at a time. Obviously, no emojis. That's pretty self-explanatory. No contact information or outside links. That can be a little bit tricky because Airbnb has gotten very strict on this. And if you have something in your description where you have maybe two separate sentences, but you forget to have a space between them, that is going to cause an error because Airbnb is going to view that as a link. So make sure if you have a period that you have a space after that period. Otherwise, it can cause an error. And then the other thing that will cause an error is if you have anything in all capital letters. So something like that would cause an error when your listing is syncing to Airbnb. So just make sure that you're avoiding all of these things in your descriptions. No phone numbers, no email addresses, no websites. Even if you have Airbnb.com mentioned in your description, it will still cause an error. So just don't do any of that and you'll be good to go. All right, so that brings us to the end of today's focus session. We covered creating property descriptions, including how to set up a description override for a channel or for your hosted website. We also talked about how to complete the guest instructions page and how to complete the health and safety page. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post those in the chat. And while we wait to see if any questions come in, I'm going to go over some other support resources that are available to you as our OwnerRez users. So of course, we have our help desk, help@ownerrez.com. You can always email us there. Be sure to include as much detail as you can and a relevant subject line that will help us get you a response, a useful response as quickly as possible. And then we have our support center that you can find at ownerrez.com/support. And if you're looking specifically for support videos, you can go to ownerrez.com/support/videos. We also have our forums where you can ask questions and get feedback from other OwnerRez users as well as from our team, ownerrez.com/forums. And then we have our blog, ownerrez.com/blog. That is where you can stay up to date on all of the latest OwnerRez news, including new partner integrations, new updates to the software, and also industry news updates that are published regularly. We also, of course, have our webinars page, ownerrez.com/webinars, and you can go to that page to find all of our upcoming webinars as well as past focus sessions. If you scroll down a little bit below the upcoming webinars, you'll find past focus sessions that we have done. So hopefully that is helpful for you all. And let me double check, but I don't think we have, okay, we do have a couple of questions. So Sherry is asking, if you use the default description, will Airbnb take the first 50 of the 80 character headline, or should there be a dedicated headline override? Best practice will be to do a dedicated headline override because you don't want to accidentally miscalculate where those 50 characters are and have it cut off in the middle of a word. So best practice, do an override. If you want to just do an override for Airbnb, since most of the other channels do allow up to 80 characters, that will work as well. For the house manual, it has to be a PDF or not a link. So the house manual section on the guest instructions page is something that would be displayed to this section right here. This is something that will be displayed to your Airbnb guests. It won't be displayed anywhere else unless you use a field code to add it to a template. So we usually recommend setting up your house manual in a different way. And if you need more ideas on how to do that, you can reach out to our help desk, help@ownerrez.com. And then Janice is asking about the hosted website. So I'm going to refer you to a webinar that I did a while back on the hosted website. If you go to ownerrez.com/webinars and then search that page for hosted websites, you should see a webinar from earlier this year. And I explained how to create subpages and submenus in that webinar. You can also look in our support center for more information on that. And if you need additional assistance, feel free to reach out to our help desk, help@ownerrez.com. Roxana, I am not sure about what happens if you put a link here. So I would maybe test that in your account or reach out to our help desk because it's possible somebody else on the team knows how that works. You can also look in our support center to see if we have more information on that. All right, I don't see any other questions. So thank you all so much for being with me today. I'll be doing another focus session in a couple weeks to round out the rest of the listing content, and I hope to see you there. Bye-bye.